Heart-stopping moment. Little girl cries for help. Millionaire rushes to the rescue at 3 a.m. The night was thick with shadows, the kind that swallowed whole houses and whispered secrets. Outside, the moon hung high like a ghostly eye, illuminating the world in ghostly silver. It was precisely 3 a.m. when the piercing cry of a little girl shattered the silence, echoing through the empty streets. Her voice danced on the chilly air like a lost soul searching for a way home. It was a sound that made hearts clench and skin crawl, a desperate plea that no one could ignore. As the millionaire, James Hawthorne, jolted awake in his sprawling mansion, his expensive silk sheets tangled around his legs, he sensed something was wrong. The air felt thick, electric. He threw off the covers, his heart pounding like a drum. He pulled on his robe and slipped into his expensive loafers, rushing toward the sound that haunted his dreams. Was it real? Or just a figment of his overworked mind? He stepped outside, the cold biting at his skin, but there was no time to think. The scream came again, raw and trembling. A little girl, alone in the night. What was she doing out here? Where were her parents? James felt a lump in his throat. He'd spent years building walls around his heart. Now, they were crumbling. His sense of duty surged forward, pulling him toward the darkness. His breath quickened as he followed the sound, weaving through towering trees and the shadows of the night. Just as he rounded the corner, he spotted her, a small figure wrapped in a pink blanket, her blonde hair glowing eerily in the moonlight. She was crouched by the old playground, her tiny frame trembling like a leaf in the wind. What had happened? His mind raced with a million questions, each more desperate than the last. A sudden rustling noise startled him. He spun around, eyes wide with fear. Was someone else out here with them? The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. His instincts screamed danger. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. James's heart raced as he locked eyes with the girl. She looked up at him, fear painted across her fragile face. Help me, she whimpered, her voice barely a whisper. It was a simple plea, but it sent a shiver down his spine. He reached out, but before he could take a step forward, he felt a cold wind whip through the playground, sending chills down his back. The swings creaked ominously as shadows moved in the corner of his eye. What had brought her here? What loomed in the darkness surrounding them? That feeling of dread had hard edges. Something was off. He took a breath, determination flooding his veins. He needed to get her out of here. But as he inched closer, the world around him grew silent, ominous. Would he be able to protect her from whatever had taken her away from safety? What secrets lurked in the shadows, waiting to unravel? As he glanced back toward the surrounding darkness, the questions spiraled, gripping his heart with mounting urgency. James took another cautious step towards the little girl, his heart hammering like thunder in his chest. "It's okay," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "I'm here to help you." "What's wrong?" But the girl merely shook her head, her wide blue eyes darting around the park as if she feared being seen. An image flashed in James's mind of his own childhood, of playgrounds filled with laughter, not terror. But here, this place felt different, alive with looming dread. Suddenly, a chilling laugh echoed from the shadows, piercing the silence. James froze, the hairs on his arms prickling. "Who's there?" he called out, heart racing as he instinctively took another step forward. The playground swings swayed slightly, even though there was no wind. "James!" the girl cried, her tiny voice breaking. "We have to go." He coming before he could react. She grabbed his hand, her grip surprisingly strong and desperate. The chill in the air wrapped around him like chains, yet there was no time for fear. He turned toward the exit of the playground, scanning the tree line, searching for movement. He couldn't bear the thought of something lurking in the dark. Who's coming? But she didn't answer. Instead, she pulled him toward the path, her eyes wide with terror. Please! Run! As they started to move, the laughter came again, louder this time, a twisted sound that sent ice through James's veins. He couldn't comprehend it, couldn't understand who could possibly think this was a game. He simply had to protect her. They dashed past the empty swings, the swings creaking in protest, and towards the tall trees that dotted the park. James felt the air grow heavier, thick with an unspeakable tension. He risked a glance over his shoulder, but the darkness remained stubbornly still, teasing his imagination. Where are your parents? He asked, still trying to make sense of the situation. But the girl only shivered, her eyes fixating ahead, never looking back. With each step, James felt more out of control. He wasn't accustomed to this kind of fear. His life was often dictated by his decisions, his plans. But now, he was swept along in a current he did not understand. He had to stay focused. Stay close, he urged. Just then, a tall, shadowy figure broke from behind a tree, silhouetted against the moonlight. James's breath hitched. What was that? The figure seemed to swirl like smoke, its presence cold and almost suffocating. Run, James! The girl screamed, her voice rising in panic. They sprinted forward, adrenaline surging through James as the figure began to move towards them. His instincts burned hotter. This way! He yelled, guiding her towards the street beyond the park, praying for help to be nearby. The echoes of laughter twisted through the air behind them, a haunting reminder that they weren't alone. He could feel the breath of something dark chasing them, a presence that refused to let go. Suddenly, the girl stumbled, falling to the ground. Time froze for James as he quickly turned back, dread clawing at him. Get up! He shouted, rushing back toward her. Just as he reached her, a loud crack shattered the stillness, and the shadow loomed closer. For the first time, he felt true fear grip his heart, an unyielding terror. Could he protect her? Could they escape? As they scrambled to their feet, the shadows loomed over them, whispering his name, chilling him to the bone. They dashed toward the street, but another surge of laughter filled the air, each note more sinister than the last. What had he gotten himself into? What threats lay hidden in the dark, waiting for them? In that moment, with the weight of fear heavy between them, James knew one thing: they had to escape, or they would face the darkness together. But what if the real danger was not in the shadows? What if it was closer than he realized? As the laughter grew louder, the questions spiraled, and James felt a knot of dread tightening in his gut. Was there still time to save them both? James felt the weight of the world on his shoulders as they tore through the thinning foliage. Adrenaline coursed through his veins, keeping him focused even when panic threatened to overwhelm him. The girl was still holding his hand, her grip tightening with each step, her small figure almost dragging behind him. Stay close, he said again, almost a plea, hearing the laughter grow fainter but no less eerie. Why won't you listen? She gasped, her breath coming in quick, frightened bursts. You don't understand. What don't I understand? James yelled back, frustration mingling with fear as they navigated the maze of trees. He's different. He's not like anyone else. Her voice trailed off, leaving a heavy silence that filled the air around them. He glanced sideways, his heart pounding in a frantic rhythm. She looked so young, so fragile, yet there was a wisdom in her fear that unsettled him. Suddenly, they broke free from the clutches of the trees, emerging into a wide-open space, an abandoned road lined with dark buildings that loomed like giants in the night. James hadn't realized how late it was, the normally vibrant street now muted and lifeless. Where are we? He whispered, more to himself than her. Safe, she cried, pulling him toward the nearest building. But something in her voice didn't match the urgency of her pull. It sounded like a wish, not a certainty. Without thinking, he followed her towards a shattered door that hung crookedly from its hinges. Inside, the air was stale, thick with dust and a peculiar heaviness that made every breath feel labored. The girl dashed forward, glancing nervously around as if sensing something James could not. Hide! She commanded, slipping into an alcove, her eyes wide. What? He replied, confusion creeping into his voice. Before she could respond, a shuffling sound echoed from the shadows of the darkened room. The hair on the back of James's neck prickled, an urgent pulse of instinct warning him to move, to get away. But it was too late. A figure emerged from the darkness, the same shadow he had seen in the park. Taller than any man he'd known, its edges flickered like smoke in the low light, and an unearthly chill radiated from it. James's heart dropped to his stomach. This was not the kind of danger he could outsmart or outrun. James, the girl's voice trembled. We have to be quiet. James could only nod, the chilling presence of the figure freezing him in place. As it advanced, he felt each thud of his heart echo louder than the last. The shadow stopped, glancing toward them with an intensity that sent waves of dread washing over James. It tilted its head, as if trying to discern their hiding place. That's when the girl's grip on his arm tightened, and a surge of protectiveness enveloped him. Whatever that thing was, he would not let it take her. Listen to me, he whispered urgently. When I say go, we run. No looking back. Just get out as fast as you can. Terror creased her young face, but she nodded. You can't save me, she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. No one can. Don't say that. He hissed as the shadow took a step closer, the air thickening with its approach. I have to, she insisted, her voice trembling. It's already too late for me, but you can still escape. Before he could respond, the figure lunged into the alcove, its form shifting, becoming more defined, more alive. James felt the heat of its gaze envelop him, and for a moment, all hope seemed to vanish into the oppressive darkness. Run! He screamed, and the girl was already darting past him, fear lending her speed. But James hesitated, torn between the primal instinct to flee and an overwhelming need to protect her. The shadows surged forward, darkness stretching beyond reason. Just as it reached for her, James dove, forcing himself in front of the girl. An ear-splitting shriek pierced the air as the world around him erupted into chaos. What had he gotten himself into? Would he be able to protect her in time? As the shadows danced, swirling around them, James felt the boundaries of reality begin to blur. How could he fight something with no form? And what awaited them both in this world devoid of light? But there was one thing he could still do. His voice echoed with determination, a final plea against the impending doom. Not today! And for one fleeting moment, hope flickered amid the dark. But was it strong enough to pierce the blackness closing in? James hit the ground hard, feeling the damp earth against his cheek. He could barely catch his breath while the world around him spun in a haze of shadows and whispers. The girl's footsteps were like thunder in his ears, but all he could focus on was the figure looming closer, its form sharp and cold like a blade slicing through night. James! The panic in her voice yanked him back to reality. He turned instinctively, instinct overriding rational thought. The shadow flickered, grasping for the girl with fingers of darkness. No! He didn't think as he surged to his feet, eyes wide. Get away from her! His voice rang out in desperation, and in that moment, a memory flood came crashing down on him. A long-buried childhood phobia struck him, the idea of being stuck in the dark, of something lurking, waiting to pounce. And now, it was right before him. The girl stumbled back, her frail frame pressing against the shadows of the alcove. In that second, her fragile facade cracked, revealing a terrified child fighting against despair. He saw it, fear twisting her face, reminding him that she was only a child caught in something so much bigger than herself. The shadow pulsed, twisting like smoke as it reached for the girl, its malevolent energy writhing in the air. Go! He shouted again at her, the terror colliding with own sense of duty. Just move! I'll hold it off. No! She screamed, stepping out from her hiding place, her eyes blazing with defiance. You don't understand. You can't fight it. James's heart sank. Why was she still here? Why wasn't she running? Please! He begged, knowing time was slipping away. Just run! But her feet were stuck, as if rooted to the ground. "I can't!" she cried. "I can't leave you!" The shadow lunged, its energy sparking. Time slowed, hesitation clutching at James's heart. He couldn't allow this creature to take her. Not now. Not ever. He saw something, some hint of a decision flickering in her eyes. "Listen," he urged, stepping forward, each inch a battle against the pull of the darkness. "We're stronger together." Just then, the darkness thickened, encasing both of them in an icy grip. It felt like suffocating dread, the kind that wrapped around the throat, squeezing until despair flared. The girl's breath hitched, and James could see the resolve in her waning. What was left to do? He had to believe. Even against the insurmountable odds pushing them apart. "Trust me." His voice cracked, shimmering with a desperate hope. Before he could think, he grabbed her hand, squeezing tightly an anchor to pull them out of this void. As the shadow surged forward, in one calculated motion, he pulled the girl closer. "On 3. 1, 2, 3. Together they ran, his heart thundering, every instinct screaming for survival. The shadow roared, a sound that resonated deep within James's bones, but he dared not look back. Every step was an act of defiance, although the haze of darkness seemed to chase them, hungry for their fear. "Where do we go?" she shouted through the din, eyes wide with terror. "There." He pointed toward the door they had entered. Light. It was faint but real, a sliver of safety igniting a glimmer of hope in his chest. But the shadow reacted, a furious twist of darkness roaring toward them. It suffocated the air around, whispering sweet nothings into James's mind, threats coated in silk, seducing him to give in. "Move!" he yelled, lunging ahead. As their feet pounded against the cracked floor, both pushing hard towards that faint promise, the space around them flickered. Shadows turned to ghastly shapes, elongating with every footfall. With one final surge of adrenaline, they reached the threshold. "Jump!" he shouted as he leapt, the weight of the darkness clawing at their heels. Time slowed, the world tilting as they broke through the door just as the roar of the shadow echoed behind them. They landed, rolling onto hard concrete, breathless and gasping for air. Everything settled into silence. The night around them was still. The girl looked up at him, fear and something else in her eyes, curiosity. "What was that?" she whispered. James glanced back at the doorway, a cold dread settling in his stomach. "I don't know, but it's not done with us." Suddenly, a distant laugh rang out from the darkness, chilling him to the bone. And from that laugh came a question that would change everything. "Are you ready for round 2? James's heart raced as he turned to the girl, frozen in the chilling aftermath. James's heart thudded painfully in his chest as the laugh ricocheted off the walls of that darkened alley. It was a sound so sinister, so full of malice, it felt alive. The girl's grip tightened on his hand, her knuckles white. Time stretched, a palpable tension thrumming in the air. They were exposed in the pale light, shadows creeping closer, eager to reclaim what they thought was theirs. The girl looked small next to him, trembling, a living embodiment of raw fear. He had no idea what they were facing, but a deep instinct drove him to shield her. "It can't get in here," he said, though uncertainty pooled in his gut. "Can it?" She shook her head slowly, her eyes darting around for some hidden escape. "I don't know. It's waiting for us to make a mistake." The shadows shifted, bloated and hungry, teasing the edges of the dim light. It felt as if they were being drawn back into the void. But he couldn't think about that. They needed a plan, something solid to hang on to. "Okay," he said, forcing the words to sound steady. "We need to find somewhere safe. My house is nearby." "Is it safe?" she asked, her voice quaking. "It has to be." He pulled her along, moving as quickly as he dared. The street was unwelcoming, littered with remnants of the day, a broken bottle glinting under a flickering street lamp, discarded newspapers swirling in the wind like restless spirits. Each step echoed as if the night itself was holding its breath, but as they moved, the laughter returned, resonating from the shadowy corners. It was closer now, twisted and mocking. "Leaving so soon?" it taunted. "You think you're safe? You don't know what I can do. James felt a surge of defiance. No more dread. No more running. Shut up! He screamed into the abyss, his voice cracking. You wouldn't take us? As if those words had been a secret incantation, the shadows recoiled. A momentary silence fell, and he seized it, urging the girl forward. This way. They turned a corner, sprinting down a narrow alley that led toward the main street. With every footfall, the laughter faded momentarily, only to return stronger, a dark symphony following their every move. It knew them. It was stalking them. James! She whimpered as he glanced back. There it was, the shadow, a writhing mass, more defined now, slithering up the wall like a sinister smoke. A face surfaced briefly, twisted and grotesque, eyes burning with an unholy fire. Keep moving! He shouted, panic clawing at his throat. Just a little farther. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shifted. He stumbled, darting sideways, just as tendrils of darkness lashed out, mere inches from ensnaring them. They barely escaped, barely clung to their hope. With renewed urgency, he pulled the girl, urging her forward. There! He pointed to a lit shop, its neon open sign flickering uncertainly. As they sprinted towards it, scattered thoughts raced through his mind. What if they were simply running deeper into the creature's trap? James, hurry! She cried, her eyes wide with sheer terror. They reached the door, and he yanked it open, forcing them inside. The sudden warmth enveloped them, a stark contrast to the cold dread outside. He slammed the door shut, feeling a brief moment of safety wash over him. But it was short-lived. The laughter bubbled up again from outside. It was joined now by another sound, the soft thuds of something pressing against the door. In that throbbing silence, James turned to the girl, his determination hardening. This isn't over. We can't hide. We have to fight. She stared at him, the flicker of fear turning to a spark of something else. Resolve? Fight? She echoed softly. Yeah. We find out what that thing wants, and we end it. Suddenly, a loud crash shook the door like thunder. The shadows battered against the barrier, hungry and relentless. Are you with me? He asked, hoping his voice sounded stronger than he felt. Yes, she whispered, but uncertainty hung heavy around her. The door shuddered violently, and with it, James's heart teetered on the brink. They only had moments. Then let us do this, he said, embracing the surge of fear and determination. No more running. The doorknob twisted, the grip of darkness sharpening, and just as everything seemed it would break, a new voice cut through the chaos, clear and commanding. You think you can escape that easily? James's heart raced. Who was this new foe? The new voice echoed ominously, shattering the tense moment like glass. It was neither the laughter nor the scratchy whispers from before. This was something different, something crafted from authority and malice. Step back, James urged, pulling the girl protectively against him. The door thudded again, accompanied by a terrible laughter that twisted his insides. But this time, the sound was layered, as if echoing from countless throats. It was mocking them, relishing the desperation. Do you really think it's that easy? The voice continued, dripping with disdain. You're nothing but pawns in a game much bigger than you can understand. A chill swept through the shop, making the hair on James's arms stand on end. The atmosphere thickened, an oppressive weight pressing down on him. The girl clutched tighter to his waist, her small body trembled against his side. What does it want? She whispered, and he sensed the pure terror in her voice. I don't know, he admitted, unsure if the admission would do more harm than good. Suddenly, the door rattled in its frame, the wood creaking in protest. A heartbeat later, the lights flickered above them, dimming ominously as if the universe was holding its breath. Let me in, the authoritative voice demanded, tainted with impatience. There's no need for such theatrics. You can't hide from what you cannot even comprehend. A surge of adrenaline coursed through James. You're wrong. We're not afraid of you, he shouted, though his voice wavered slightly, half a grim reminder for himself as much as a taunt for whatever awaited them outside. But even as the words left his mouth, doubt clawed at him. He felt the shadows brewing, thickening against the walls, sides of the room blurring as if the very air were painted with darkness. They were trapped in a game woven by a puppet master. How could they even begin to fight? Suddenly, the windows rattled violently. With a deafening crash, a dark tendril smashed against the glass, which shattered, spraying shards all over the tiled floor. The creature roared on the other side, a furious jolt that felt like ice slicing through his veins. "Run!" James shouted, dragging the girl toward the back of the shop, desperate to find an exit. Her feet stumbled, but she kept close, a tiny anchor against his mounting fear. They dashed past rows of forgotten goods, dusty boxes, old clothes, and skidded around a corner. The energy of the place pulsated, vibrated, almost as if the very building was alive, aware of the threat chasing them. They reached a small door, the kind meant for storage, barely visible in the gloom. "Here," he urged, pushing it open with trembling hands. The door creaked painfully, speaking as loudly as his racing heart. Just as they slipped inside, the air erupted with sounds of chaos from the shop, furniture smashing, things being thrown. "You think escaping through a back door will save you? The hunt has only just begun." The voice boomed, followed by a guttural laugh that shook him to the core. Inside the cramped storage room, the darkness became a cocoon, enveloping them in silence. James felt the girl shivering against him, still holding on tightly. "What do we do? Where do we go?" He held a finger to his lips, stilling the panic stirring in him. "We need to think." But then, the shadows crept beneath the door, curling and twisting. He felt their cold presence bleeding through. Time was running out, and the distance shrank rapidly. "I don't want to be a pawn anymore," she whispered, her voice shaking. James looked down, the spark of resolve he'd seen before flickering again. "What do you mean?" "I can help. I saw something earlier." "A way to fight back, what?" he pressed, a sliver of hope igniting despite the shadow pressing in on them. "Look in the boxes. I think we can use it." With that, uncertainty transformed to urgency. He dove towards the nearest crate, tearing open the lid, adrenaline surging. But just then, a clawed shadow burst through the door, spilling into the room like an invulnerable wave. What he saw next shattered everything. There was no fighting. No escaping. Only one choice left. He spun toward the girl, heart racing. "Whatever you saw now is the time." The darkness shifted, slithering closer, malicious eyes glinting in the near pitch black. But as he reached for her, something huge loomed in the obscurity. What if we didn't have to face this creature alone? Questions echoed as the door behind them slammed shut, sealing them in complete darkness. The darkness swallowed them whole, a suffocating weight that made James's chest feel tight. He grasped the edge of the crate, heart thumping violently against his ribs, hands trembling as they searched the dark for any sign of hope. The girl's breath hitched beside him, tiny gasps that echoed like whispers of fear in the air around them. "Stay close," he murmured, forcing himself to sound steady. He couldn't let her see the dread crawling through him. "Not now." As his fingers fumbled through the contents of the crate, he felt jagged bits of glass and twisted metal, remnants of long-forgotten objects. They were scattered like memories, useless and dangerous. "What did you see?" he asked, urgency creeping into his voice. "What can we use?" "Something bright like a stone," she replied, her voice trembling. "It was shining. I think it could help or hurt it." James pushed aside more debris, feeling the shadows inch closer, almost sentient, as if aware of their frantic search. His mind raced. Was there even a chance it would work? Suddenly, a cold wind whipped through the storage room, causing the crates to rattle and shift. The tendrils of darkness spiraled around the entrance, sealing them in further. The mocking laughter echoed, a chorus that sent chill bumps racing down his arms. "You think you can hide? The hunt will find you." His heart sank. Panic clawed at his throat. No, it felt hopeless, like drowning in a sea of despair. Then, just as his fingers grazed something hard beneath the twisted box, a pulse of adrenaline shot through him. He gripped it, pulling it free. The stone, small but radiant, shimmered with an ethereal glow, pulsating like a heartbeat in the dark. "Here!" he exclaimed, holding it up. Its light cut through the shadow, illuminating the tendrils that seemed to hesitate, retreating slightly as if burned. The girl's face lit up with hope. That's it. We can use it. Stay behind me. Whatever happens, don't look away. He pushed forward, using the stone like a shield. The darkness quivered, forming a monstrous shape that roared with fury, eyes bright as tiny stars blinking into existence. It lunged, its claws outstretched, ready to grab them in its vice-like grip. James steadied his breath. Now! Focus on the light. Bolstered by the girl's presence, he thrust the stone forward, an act of defiance. The creature recoiled, shrieking in an unholy wail, shadows swirling around it as if the air itself were shattering. A moment of shock hung heavy in the room, and then the darkness surged, countering the stone's light, each pushing against the other in a terrifying struggle. Now the true nature of the entity began to unravel, and not just a monster, but a force born from something deeper and darker. Keep fighting! She shouted, determination creeping back into her voice. We can't let it win! But as they pressed on, the shadows began to weave an intricate web around them, each twist and turn drawing them closer to a sickening end. This is just a diversion. The voice sliced through the chaos. You are meant to be lost. With every ounce of strength, James pushed the stone harder into the dark, felt its warmth spreading through him, a flicker of hope against despair. The shadows shrieked, but they didn't retreat. It was at that moment something twisted in James's gut, a realization that froze his veins. What if this wasn't just about fighting back? What if the darkness knew something he didn't? Wait! He shouted, panic clawing at his throat. What if it's not just attacking? What if it's trying to tell us something? The shadows pulsed rhythmically, each thrum signaling secrets buried deeper in the dark. James hesitated, grappling with the choice: face the creature or decipher its sinister message. But as he reached out, the darkness surged again, a wave crashing over them, pulling him into its depths. James! The girl screamed, flailing against the enveloping shadows. He couldn't lose her, not now. Then, in an instant, everything flickered into silence. The world around them vanished, leaving only the girl's terrified gaze locked on his. We can't give up, can we? He whispered, desperation filling every word as they faced the eclipsed abyss. But just then, the veil of darkness shifted. A blinding light flickered at the edge, revealing a desperate truth. Something coming. What lay beyond the shadows, they could not know. The choice hovered between them, a single moment teetering on the cusp of revelation or despair. Would they uncover the truth, or would the darkness consume them entirely? The darkness fell away abruptly, like a curtain pulled from the stage, leaving James and the girl in a blinding swirl of white light. It enveloped them, warm yet piercing, pushing back against the shadows like an angry tide. Heart racing, James shielded his eyes, struggling to make sense of the new reality. The girl clutched his arm, her grip a lifeline. What's happening? She gasped. I don't know. He shouted back, half confused, half terrified. But he sensed a shift, a powerful energy crackling in the air. The darkness still lurked behind them, but now it felt like it was waiting, as if the creature was assessing the situation just as much as they were. The light pulsated, growing stronger, illuminating countless faces within it. Not just silhouettes but distinct forms, people. They seemed to move in tandem, a procession of lost souls filling the air with murmurs. James strained to hear their words, the sounds a dissonance of pleading, sorrow, and fear. Help us, save us! Echoed faintly through the spectral space. James, what do they want? The girl's voice cut through the confusion, her eyes reflecting the swirling hues of light. Maybe they're trapped, he murmured, his mind racing. Just like us. As the figures reached toward them, their outlines sharpened. James caught a glimpse of despair etched in every face: a mother with tear-rimmed eyes, a young boy with an outstretched hand, a soldier weeping silently. Their desperate pleas melded into a single haunting echo, resonating deep within his heart. Help us! We don't belong here. A wave of guilt crashed over him. He had feared for their own lives, but what if helping them was the key to their own escape? But what could he do? They seemed ensnared in an invisible prison of their own making. James turned to the girl, his voice dropping to a fierce whisper. If they're trapped, maybe the stone can help them. It lit up against the darkness. Let us try. Without giving the idea a second thought, he raised the shimmering stone high, its glow intensifying as if awakened by their resolve. The spectral faces reacted, shifting and shuddering, their longing eyes fixing on the stone. Hold on tightly, he shouted. They moved toward the figures, James feeling an invisible thread pulling him closer still. But the darkness hadn't retreated, still coiling around the edges of their light. Like a predator lurking beneath the surface, it remained biding its time. No! A sudden scream pierced through the air like a knife, raw and urgent. It came from one of the ethereal figures, a woman whose grief was palpable. She lunged forward as the darkness writhed, pulling her back with ruthless force. James's heart raced. Help her! The girl pleaded, her small fists clenched. I have to try! James shouted, determination burning in his chest. He moved closer, the stone buzzing in his hand, illuminating the figure's straining face. Let her go! He cried, ignited by a rush of adrenaline. We won't let you take her! As soon as he said those words, the shadows thrashed like living arms, lunging toward him and the girl. A visceral terror shot through him, but the glow of the stones surged in answer, brightening against the tide. Oh no, not again! He gasped, staggering back against the onslaught. The figures screamed, their voices rising in a cacophony of horror. Did they want to save her, or were they feeding the darkness? And just then, caught between light and shadow, time stopped, the world narrowing to the moment of choice. James found himself on the edge of devastation, where saving one might mean losing the others. James! The girl's voice wavered, a reflection of his own fear. They stood at the precipice, their fate intertwined with the very essence of the darkness. Can we do this? He wondered out loud, feeling the heavy weight of those eyes staring into his soul. But before he could answer, the shadows lunged again, and as they did, a crack of blinding light erupted in the distance. Their last chance flickered ominously. What would that brightness uncover? Was it friend or foe? He grasped the stone tighter, heart hammering wildly. Let us find out, he whispered, a stir of courage rising strong amidst the fear. A moment stretched before them, a heartbeat away from chaos. Would they reach the truth that lay just beyond the light, or would it consume them whole? The moment hung heavy, suspended as the shadows writhed and flickered, casting ominous shapes that danced across the light. James's heart thundered as if it was trying to break free from his chest. He took a breath, steeling himself. Here goes nothing, he muttered, thrusting the stone forward. A blinding beam shot from it, piercing through the encroaching darkness like a knife. The figures in the light blinked, their faces lit with a sudden hope that felt tangible in the air. James wanted to believe they could break free, to shatter the chains of despair binding them. But the dark mass recoiled, surging with a ferocity that sent tremors through the ground beneath them. Don't let it! The girl screamed, her voice swallowed by the overwhelming pulse of fear. James felt the darkness grab hold of him, tendrils of shadow curling around his legs, pulling him downward. Panic surged inside him. Not now! He shouted, desperately fighting against the grip. He felt the girl's small hand slip from his grasp, the weight of her absence instantly like ice in his veins. No! He shouted, his voice cracking, echoing through the chaos. He turned back to her, filled with dread. She was still there, her eyes wide, fear etched on her face, but she was standing. The light from the stone illuminated her like a guardian angel. I'm right here! She called, her voice steady despite the turmoil. Gritting his teeth, James redirected his focus to the stone. Together! He yelled, his voice steadying as he raised the stone even higher. The light burst bright, brighter than he'd ever imagined, and the shadows jerked backward as if struck. It felt like the world was turning inside out. The faces of the lost souls were drawn to the glow, drifting closer, hope mingling with fear. The sorrowful expressions transformed, turning beseeching gazes into that of courage. Take it! They cried. Show us the way! The stone pulsated in response, flowing with energy he had never felt before. The darkness twisted, separating itself from James, retreating like a wounded beast. But just as he breathed a sigh of relief, the crack of light structured itself into a towering figure, tall, menacing, and cloaked in shadow. "Fools! You think you can defy me?" The deep voice resonated, shaking even the earth beneath their feet. James felt the ground shift, and pure instinct took over. "We have to go!" he yelled to the girl, who was still battling the pull of shadows toward him. "No!" she shouted back, eyes locked on the emerging threat. "We can't leave them!" A torrent of emotion surged through him, fear battling against compassion. "We can't save everyone, not like this." The engulfing figure laughed, a sound that scraped against everything good and kind. "You want to save them? Then come to me. Embrace me." "No!" James yelled, the stone vibrating feverishly as arcs of energy bounced around him. It was not hopeless, they had a chance, but would it be enough? He gave one last look to the lost souls, flesh and bone like him, and his heart clenched with a determination he didn't know he had. "We can save them!" The words spilled from him, fierce and raw. The glow of the stone intensified, pulsating with resolute energy as he screamed, "Together! We're not alone!" With every ounce of strength, he surged toward the figure, defiance radiating from him like a beacon. But just then, the stone flickered, nearly dimming, as shadows twisted dangerously close. Would they pull him back? Would they snatch the girl away? His heart raced, but he refused to be consumed. In the tumult of chaos and fear, he forged ahead, light piercing through the heart of darkness. What will happen next? A sudden whisper escaped his lips, a question drowning in the unknown. As the edges of the light seemed to slip away, reality left a ringing silence in its wake. Where would it lead? What sacrifice lay ahead? The answers hovered tantalizingly close, yet always just out of reach. The blinding light surged around them, illuminating every shadow until the darkness trembled at its brilliance. James pressed forward, determination in every sinew. He could feel the warmth of the stone, pulsing with a rhythm that resonated with his beating heart. Beside him, the girl's eyes glimmered with hope, a reflection of the resolve that settled over him like a comforting cloak. "Hold on!" he shouted, pushing through, feeling the shadows recoil, but the monstrous figure remained rooted to its spot, laughter boiling over like an angry tide. "You think that gives you power?" it bellowed. "You have no idea what you're really fighting." But James knew one thing. Fear had clawed at him long enough. He wasn't going to let it take them. Not now. Not ever. "Together!" James bellowed once more, feeling the energy of the stone reach its zenith. The darkness around them flickered and swayed, and in that instant, clarity washed over him. This wasn't just about battling the shadows or escaping what lurked around them, it was about faith, hope, and the power of unity. They could fight it. The faces of the lost souls spiraled around them, not merely visions but shards of purpose. "James! We will help you!" they screamed, voices intertwining. And in one swift surge of energy, they broke free from the shackles of despair, merged with the light, and surged towards the creature. James felt exhilaration course through him. "We do belong!" he roared, as the stone erupted into a constellation of brilliance, illuminating everything. The darkness receded while the figure writhed, its laughter turning to a shriek of pain that echoed like the crashing of thunder. The girl stepped forward, her grip steady on James. "Together!" she echoed, her voice finding strength, weaving with the light, the souls still rising to join their cause. "We overcome this!" They charged toward the looming shadow, light spilling forth like a wave that shattered all remnants of fear. The creature roared against it, its form beginning to dissolve into wisps of panic. "No! You will not take them!" it shrieked, clawing at the light as if to snuff it out. But the more it clawed, the brighter the light grew. It pulsed with James and the girl's energy, together surging in a tide of defiance. The shadows twisted and turned, panic mirroring in its malevolent eyes, while the lost souls circled, invigorated by hope revived. "Together!" James shouted again, the words a mantra against despair. "We're not afraid." Suddenly, there was silence. The darkness recoiled, a sudden withdrawal that felt like the release of an iron grip. The cries of the lost souls intertwined with the echoes of joy, freeing them from the prison they had been trapped in. And then light.it exploded outward in a magnificent blaze, swallowing everything. James felt the warmth envelop him, filling the chasm of dread that had consumed him for so long. In that heartbeat of dazzling brilliance, he sensed it, the ebb and flow of shadows finally breaking apart, retreating into nothingness. Victory tugged at his heart, but just as quickly, reality shifted, and time rewound. They stood again in the abandoned alley, but the oppressive weight of the darkness had lifted. The shadows were gone. Did we do it?" the girl whispered, awe mingled with disbelief as she looked around at the illuminated world returning to life. James couldn't quite believe it either. He held the stone, still emanating warm pulses of light, as if it had shared in their triumph. "Yes," he breathed deeply, releasing the tension that had knotted his shoulders. "We really did it." They exchanged a look, joy sweeping through the air between them. He never thought a moment like this could feel so profound. The bond they'd forged was stronger than fear. Looking back toward the park, there was a sense of finality in the air, a promise fulfilled. A weight lifted off his chest, the heaviness of guilt and fear evaporating like mist at dawn. The little girl smiled, and in that moment she looked so much older, wiser. "What now?" she asked softly. "Now we find your family," James replied, a comforting warmth wrapping around his heart. "They must be waiting for you." Together they made their way out of the alley, leaving behind the shadows that dared to threaten them. The dawn broke, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink, the chill of night giving way to warmth, a reminder of hope flickering in every town, every heart. As they walked through the vibrant streets, the memories of their battle hung in the air, a secret shared. They had faced darkness and emerged stronger, unbreakable. "Thank you," she said as they strolled side by side, "for not leaving me." "I could never leave you," he chuckled, a newfound tenderness swelling within him. "You taught me that really, hope is the brightest light of all." The world felt different now, each person alive in the light of day. The shadows were gone, but what remained was a shared love, a reminder of renewed beginnings, along with the power to face the unknown ahead. As they turned a corner, searching for familiar faces amidst the crowd, James felt a rush of gratitude for their bond, unyielding and beautifully fragile. They were ready for whatever came next together. And just like that, the story held its final breath. Now, folks, if you enjoyed this heart-stopping conclusion, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories waiting just for you. Smash that like button now to truly feed the algorithm and keep the positivity flowing. I want to hear from you. Flood the comments section with your reactions and your theories about this ending. What did you think? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support makes all the difference. Let us keep this incredible community growing.